So this MMA YouTuber made a petition to strip John Jones from his UFC heavyweight belt. And it's gone to the point where even big names like Daniel Cormier, Demetrius Johnson, Ariel Helwani, and many more has actually covered this topic on their shows. And with this petition being at 150,000 plus signatures, this honestly may have put UFC in a tough spot. I'll explain that a little bit more. But before I get into it, if you guys can, please hit the subscribe button and let's shoot for 10 likes on this video. Anyways, let's get into it. So this is the UFC petition that I was kind of mentioning about earlier, right? Change.org, we got the petition, strip John Jones of the undisputed UFC heavyweight belt. And as you can see, if you scroll down a bit, the person that started it, Tony, has died, right? I go to see who this person is. He's here, 5,000 subscribers on YouTube. I wonder how it got that big, that quick within a week to where, like I mentioned earlier about all these, big MMA YouTubers are reacting about this. I also didn't realize he has an Instagram page with 84,000 followers. He has a lot of an MMA parody account. He basically there for UFC memes and shit. So I think a lot of the notoriety about this UFC petition has came from his Instagram account. And how I found out about all this is from MMA Guru. He made this video 9 days ago, right? So a week and a half ago. A week and a half ago, it was at 7,000 signatures. 7,000 in 9 days. We're at 150,000. Now, with, all these, with the Ariel Helwanis, the Daniel Cormiers, and the Demetrius Johnsons now reacting to all of this, right? This is why it's a bad look within the UFC. For one, it's not a secret that the UFC has favorites. John Jones fought and defeated Cyril Gane, believe back of March of 2023, right? Then he was supposed to defend it against Stipe Miocic, Madison Square Garden. That didn't happen because John Jones got hurt, and Alex Pereira got elevated in main event to where the co-main was Tom Aspinall and Sergey Pavlovich, I believe, during that time. Tom Aspinall won that fight. Then the next following year, defended the belt in 2024 against Curtis Blades. So you would think after John Jones being fully healthy, right, the champion would go against the interim champion, right? Nope, that didn't happen. They still scheduled Stipe Miocic, and with Stipe Miocic not even deserving a title shot, to be quite honest with you, John Jones, won that fight within the third round knockout, right? Or third round finish, I believe is what it was. Forgot the fight. Point being, though, I think that is a clear, blatant sign of favoritism because, immediately, not only with the interim champion getting the belt, he had at least defended it once. If any other fighter had an interim belt holder not only defend the belt once, but getting the belt in general, and they still decide not to fight him, Dana White would strip the champion. Even in, with recently with the whole Islam and Ilya thing, right? Dana White forced them to strip the belt. Islam Makhachev defended the belt 4 times, and Dana White still told him to strip him because he doesn't want to hold up the whole division. Where's this same energy with John Jones? It's pretty obvious, with what they're doing with John Jones. That's very obvious the favoritism. I don't want to spend too much time on that. The next point, however, I want to get into is that the UFC is getting away with this whole best versus best fighting narrative. The UFC's biggest appeal for years was that the best was supposed to fight the best. Where has that happened now? With fights like Volkanovski and Yair Rodriguez and, the Merab and Sean O'Malley rematch, I feel very passionate in saying, those aren't the best fighting the best. And with, Volkan Yair being the recent example, I'll talk about that a little bit more. Masvidal, he just came off an Aljo win, and, he is undefeated. They're not giving him that title shot because, to the UFC eye, it's not the most appeal fight style. But he is the best contender that is worthy to fight for the belt next. And, instead of him, they're going to go with Yair, who's a, fun on the eye with, at least with people who watch UFC, he's very fun to see as a striker, which I would 100% agree about. But Yair, I believe, is also 1-3 in the last 4 fights. And that is where it confuses me, right? That's where the narrative of the best fight the best, that's kind of dead now. It's more of, who sells the most, who has the more entertaining style of fights so they can put on. It's not necessarily, who fights the best anymore. And that's what's, unfortunate about the state of the UFC currently. They're in a tough position, honestly, of how to balance between the entertaining fighters and who actually deserve it the most. And yeah, I'm very curious to see how these next few years go. Not only with just the fight competition and who's going to be coming up next, but even with the TV deals and what they do with overall, just to kind of go back to it, the John Jones, Tom Aspinall thing. And so yeah, that's what I think about this whole issue with the UFC with this John Jones petition. Let me know, what you guys think about this in the comments below. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.